everyone, onward and upward. This week we're moving on to chapter 8. So last week we talked about the structure and organization of the judicial system. This week we're going to talk about the personnel or the people that work within the court system. So the first lecture we're going to really focus on the judges and their roles, and then the second lecture we'll look at other personnel within the court system. So let me share my PowerPoint and we can get started. Okay. So like I said, we're going to be talking about court personnel, what their roles and their functions are. So basically, one of the things that's important in this unit is a lot of people have no idea how the courts function and how they operate on a day-to-day basis. So that's really what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, we know there's a court, we know there's a judge and jury, and we know there's trials, but how do we keep the whole building and the whole court system functioning? So that's really what we're going to look at. So what do you think? Who runs the court's day-to-day activities? And I don't mean the trials. I mean, who keeps the whole courthouse functioning? So that is what we call judicial administration. So judicial administration is the people that run the day-to-day activities of the court system. So they're the ones that actually keep the whole structure, the whole building operating the way it's supposed to be, okay? So we know we have individual judges, but this is court administration is how we keep the whole system moving. So when we think about court administration, we have to think about who's the boss? Who's the boss of the whole court system? And basically it is the judges. So the judges are sort of the boss of the whole system, but there are also other people that basically keep the system running. So you have court administrators. So their whole job is to make sure that the court structure works. And then you have jury administrators who are responsible to assure that you have juries and people there in order to conduct jury trials, okay? So we're going to start with the judge. So we're going to talk about the roles and functions of a judge and the rules and problems and different things that judges face. And then we'll talk about those other administrators in the next lecture. So just to get you thinking about a judge, I want you to make a list of 10 characteristics that you would want from a judge. So if you had to think about you were hiring a judge, what kind of things would you be looking for from that judge? What kind of personality characteristics, leadership qualities, what kind of characteristics would you look for from a judge, educational level? See if you can come up with about 10 things, okay? So hopefully you came up with your list. And we have to think about how do we get those kinds of people? If those are the characteristics of a judge that we want, then how do we select our judges? Well, there are 3 different methods that are used to select judges. So first we have appointed. Appointed means somebody picks out somebody and appoints them to that position. So a lot of times, if it's the federal, it's the president picks it and the Senate confirms. If it's state, it's our governor. So it says gubernational. So it's the governor and then the legislature approves it. So if you have an appointment, you have one person pick, another group of people confirm that appointment. The next one is election. So some places use election. So judges get their jobs by running just like any other politician running for office. And then some states use what's called the merit selection. So the merit selection is when you have some sort of legal organization like the American Bar Association that kind of recommends people that should have the job. And then the governor could pick from that list. So it's kind of a combined merit. You have to find somebody that meet the proper merit standards, and then you have sort of an appointment. So those are the 3 main methods that we use to pick judges. So what do you think? If you look at these methods, which one do you think is best? What are some pros and cons of each of these? Which ones do you think is best? So if it's governor, you're only going to have that governor or the president pick people from their political party. So it tends to be more political in nature. Elections, you have to ask yourself how many people really know what they're voting for when they're voting for elections. Is that really the best method? Maybe merit is good because it's supposed to be a neutral organization recommending people, but then you still have appointment. So when you really think about each of these methods, we have to really think which one do we think is best. Now, How do you think federal judges get their jobs? How do federal judges? Well, they are in the appointment section, right? So in the federal system, they are appointed by the president and approved by the Senate, and then they serve for life. New York is a little different. We have all the lower judges are elected in our system, so we vote for them. Our middle system, the appellate division, you have to first be elected to a lower court, and then the governor will pick you and put you on the appellate division. And our highest court in the whole state is just a governor appointment. The governor picks you. So it just depends where you are, what jurisdictions that you have, okay? So how long do they serve? They serve for life. If they're federal, in New York, since they're elected, they serve whatever their electoral term is. So 10 years, 14 years, it just depends, okay? So this is just an interesting slide where it kind of breaks down what methods that they use. New York is in combined because we use election and we use appointment, and then we use both. So we're kind of in this combined method. But it's interesting to see how many use merit, how many use partisan election. That means they have to actually declare a political party when they're running for election. Some have them run, but don't declare a political party. They just run neutrally. And then you have appointment, and then you have these mixed. So it's just kind of interesting to look how people are chosen for the judge position. Now, why would you want to be a judge? What are some of the benefits of being a judge? Well, sometimes you have a life appointment. So once you get that job, you stay in that job until you die or you choose to resign. So that is our federal judges. In New York, we don't have any lifetime appointments. They all serve certain terms, even the appointed ones. Being a judge provides a really stable salary and benefits. It's a really good job. You're never going to be a multi-millionaire, but you're going to have a really nice salary, and you're either a state or federal worker, so you're going to have really nice benefits. You're going to have a high degree of respect and prestige. It's considered a very prestigious job, and it also gives you lots of power. Judges have a lot of discretion and a lot of power in our system. Now, what are some of the problems with being a judge? So you are a judge, you just got picked as a judge, you're walking into the courtroom the first day. What are some problems that you will face as you start your job, right? So you have to think about it. You walk in the courtroom for the first time, you just got elected, and you are a judge. What are some things you should be thinking about? Well, you have to understand all the law. So remember, most judges are hearing cases on lots and lots of different things. So you're all in criminal justice, so you learn the criminal system. But if you're a judge over civil cases, contracts, wills, torts, estates, all kinds of issues. So you have to be able to master the law in lots and lots of different areas. It doesn't mean you memorize everything, but it means you can recognize an issue and you can go out and find where the answers are to try to make a resolution. You also have to administer your own courtroom. So the courtroom is yours. You have to keep it moving forward and keep it operating and functioning. You have to supervise all the court staff. So anybody that works within that courtroom, the court clerk, the stenographer, the court officers, anybody that works there, you are their supervisor, you are their boss. So you have to supervise them. You have to deal with other judges. So you're in a courtroom with lots of other judges, and you have to get along and work with other judges. You have to follow all your ethical responsibilities, and we're going to talk about a few in a minute. And you have to cope with the psychological discomfort of the new position. There's some pretty strict ethical codes of conduct for judges, and some people might not like you and they may not like your decision. So you have to be comfortable with the idea that you're probably going to make people unhappy, and you have to face that situation. You're not going to be loved by all, and that can be troubling for some people. So one of the things we said is mastering the law. So you may be dealing with cases, like I said, from all different sort of areas. So you have to be open to always knowing and understanding different areas of law. So like I said, you're in criminal justice, but when you're a lawyer, or I'm sorry, when you're a judge, you're going to hear cases on lots and lots and lots of different things. Sort of like a jack of all trade, but master of none. So you may have some areas you're more comfortable with, but you have to be willing to research and investigate and learn about all of these other areas of law. We also said you have to administer your courtroom. So administering your courtroom means managing your docket. So we need to talk about what is a docket. When I say you have to manage your court or manage your docket, what does that mean? The docket is all of the court cases that are in front of you. So it's a record of all the proceedings of the court cases. So you have lots and lots of court cases you're going to be juggling all at the same time on lots and lots of different subject matters. You have to be able to juggle all those, and you have to make sure you're keeping track of each case and where it is and how it's progressing. And you have to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. So you're going to have this docket or this record of all the cases in front of you, where they are, what they're doing, what you're waiting for, when they're resolved. So you have to maintain that and keep all those records and keep organized of all your court cases. So you have to ask yourselves, then, how do judges get their cases? How are they assigned their docket? So if we have multiple judges in a courthouse, how do we assign those cases to the judges? There are different methods that are used to assign cases. The first one is called round robin, or the general one is called round robin. This is the one that's most likely used. And basically you have a list of judges, and anytime a new case comes, you just assign it to the next judge in line. Okay, so you kind of follow this formal thing. So you have a list of judges, case comes in, it goes to judge 1, judge 2, judge 3, judge 4, judge 5. So they try to make it very, very neutral. They try not to have parties be able to do what we call judge shopping, so that you try to get certain judges. So sometimes some jurisdictions, they'll say, okay, for week 1, all the cases that come in week 1, we're going to give it to this judge. Week 2, we're going to give it to this judge. And lawyers keep track of that. And they then wait to file cases when they want certain judges to hear their case. So that's why most use round robin, because it's very hard to keep track of who has what case, and you can't do what's called judge shopping. Now, if you get a judge that shouldn't be your judge for multiple reasons, they can reassign it to another judge. So some judge A is up, but another judge could get that. So how could that happen? Well, if it's the very head judge, all jurisdictions have one judge that's considered the head judge. If the head judge really wants the case, they're probably going to take it. So there might be particular cases that they want to hear, and they can just kind of take it. Other times, judges may recuse themselves. Recuse means that they step out of the case. They have a potential conflict of interest. They know somebody involved. There's some sort of thing that would appear like they were going to be biased. So they'll step back and say, I'm sorry, I can't take this case. And then it will go to the next judge that's on the list. Sometimes attorneys argue that the judge is unfit to hear the case. So the attorney would ask the judge to recuse themselves and say, you shouldn't be the judge, you need to not be the judge. So that is a possibility. And then sometimes judges are on vacation, or they have another case that's coming up and they just can't handle a new case. So there may be scheduling issues where they have to assign that case to another judge. Now, there are 2 different ways to handling cases, and each jurisdiction can pick which one and how they want to do it. Some jurisdictions have what is called an individual calendar system. This is the idea that once you are assigned your judge in that round robin process, that same judge is going to hear the case all the way through the entire case. From the moment the charges are filed all the way to the sentencing, the same judge is going to handle all of those issues. Some jurisdictions don't do that. They're so big that they have judges sort of specialize in certain parts of the trial. So you may have one judge that does all arraignments. So it could be what we call the arraignment court. And if you have an arraignment, you go to that judge, and that judge just handles all arraignments. And then you could have another judge that just does the trials. And you could have another judge that just does preliminary hearings. So you could have different judges in different stages. So when you think about that, what could be some pros and cons of that? Well, if you have a judge through the whole case, they know the case, they know the facts, they're really involved in it. But if things are not going well with that judge, you're stuck with that judge throughout the whole case. With a master calendar system, you're constantly jumping from judge to judge, so they may not know your case very often. But if you don't like a particular judge, you may not be stuck with them for the whole case. So there's kind of pros and cons to both. So what do you think? If you had to pick, which one would you prefer? So it's just a thought, you know, there's not really a right or wrong answer. It's just kind of a personal preference. Now, when we talk about judges, we have to understand that there is a specific code of ethics for judges. So there's a specific code of ethics for police officers, the law enforcement code of ethics. For judges, there's the model code of judicial conduct. So these are set rules, set judicial ethical rules that all judges have to follow. So we're just going to talk about a couple of those in today's lecture. We actually do a whole week on ethics at the end of the semester. So one of the ones I want to point out is what we call Canon 1. So their rules are broken down into what they call canons. And it's just basically rules. So Rule 1, Canon 1, Rule 2, Canon 2, right? That's what they mean by canon. So Canon 1 says, a judge shall uphold and promote the independence, integrity, and impartiality of the judiciary, and shall avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety. So I just want to spend a few minutes talking about what that means, okay? So we want judges that have integrity, that are impartial, and that are fair, right? And we don't want them to appear to be biased towards one side or the other. So what do you think about this? You're at a public luncheon where new attorneys are being admitted to the County Bar Association. Upon entering, the judge observes that the room is nearly full and takes the only vacant seat, which happens to be at a table occupied by an attorney who represents the defendant in a highly publicized criminal trial currently before the judge. When the judge sits down, the judge mentions that the attorney and the attorneys agree not to discuss the case during the luncheon. Okay, so you have this judge who has an attorney with a criminal case in front of him. He sits down and he says to everybody, we're not going to talk about the case. Okay, now you are attending and you did not know about the legal case. What do you think about the judge sitting by a lawyer? Okay, so you're at the luncheon, you see the judge, see the judge sitting by a bunch of lawyers. Do you think anything about it? Are you concerned? Do you think it's weird? Well, no, probably not. They're all lawyers and they're all attending this luncheon. You wouldn't really think much about it, right? You just, oh, lawyer, he found an empty seat. It just happens to be with other lawyers. That's the case. Now, if you knew about the case and were sitting at the same table and could overhear all of the conversations, so you know that the judge and the attorney did not discuss the case, what do you think about the judge sitting by the lawyer? Well, you know that nothing bad happened. It wasn't biased. Nothing was said. There was no favoritism because you were there and you could overhear the whole conversation. But the problem is, what if you're this person? You are aware of the case, but did not hear the judge ask the lawyer to not discuss the case and cannot hear the conversations from the table. What do you think about the judge sitting by the lawyer? So you're at the next table, and maybe you're even the prosecutor in the case. And the judge who's deciding the case that you're trying right now sits next to the defense attorney in the case and is having lunch. What is going through your mind? What do you think about that? You can't hear what they're saying. What are you thinking that they're saying? So this is what we call the appearance of impropriety. It's the idea of creating a circumstance which appears to raise ethical questions, right? So our last example, people may suspect that you are talking about the case and that you're giving that attorney some sort of favoritism in that case. Now, clearly you're not, but people don't know that. It just appears that you are. As a judge, you are not even allowed to create the appearance of impropriety. So it's not that you just were improper. You actually made people think you might not be proper. That is enough to get in trouble as a judge. You can never put yourself in a situation where people are questioning whether something is happening. And that's why I have this quote, perception is often reality, because people see that and they start to think that and they start to question that judge and whether that judge is actually fair. Okay, so this is just a quote. The ethics being what they are today, even the appearance of impropriety is enough to force someone to step aside. Okay, so if you create that appearance of impropriety or favoritism or anything, even if it didn't happen, if people start to suspect it, then you are probably in trouble as a judge. So when you think about that, it's super hard. Every moment of your life, you're constantly worrying about creating an appearance of impropriety. So it's a difficult job. Now, there's another code of ethic, code of conduct, judicial conduct that I just want to mention. It's Canon 3B, subsection 4. And it says judges must be patient, dignified, and courteous to litigants, jurors, witnesses, lawyers, and others with whom they deal in an official capacity. Judges must also require similar conduct by lawyers, staff, and court officials. So what this one is saying is that you have to act reasonable. Just because you have power doesn't mean you can scream and yell and be a dictator and be brutal within your courtroom. Okay, so you have to have some level of patience and dignity as a judge. Now, we know there's good judges and bad judges. We know there's judges that don't follow this, but it can be problematic. If judges don't follow this, they can be charged with what we call judicial misconduct. And sometimes you see judicial misconduct in things like erratic behavior, screaming and yelling, holding people in contempt if they're not doing exactly what they want. There's been cases where medications were affecting their cognitive emotions. They aren't understanding what's going on in the courtroom. They're not having proper emotional temperament. Sometimes they've stayed on the bench too long and they just can't function anymore. Like if you have a life appointment, you could be 90 years old. Are you on there too long at that point? And then we definitely see a lot of times judges that are super arrogant and nasty and treat people awful. But those are all ways that judges can get in trouble. So how do they get in trouble? Well, they get reported to the New York State Disciplinary Commission. So there's a specific commission in New York State that different people from around the whole state are picked to sit on this commission. And if complaints are received about a particular judge, those complaints are filed with the disciplinary commission. They do a complete investigation. They hold a hearing, and they can boot the judge out of their position, whether elected or appointed or however they got their job. This disciplinary commission can remove that judge from that position. So what do you think about this? A part-time county court judge, held a unique part-time job as a stand-up comedian. The judge was eventually told that his part-time job was not compatible with his judge position. The issue that was raised was whether an average person understands the difference between a character from a stand-up routine and the judge's professional role. The state argued that the judge's acts contained portrayals of racist and homophobic characters. The argument was that the judge may meet defendants who know his stand-up characters and may not take him seriously as a judge. The state argues that it is vital that the judges in the state maintain the confidence of the public and demonstrate impartiality, dignity, and the integrity of the court. So, based on the judicial rules that I read to you, what do you think? Should a judge be allowed to be a part-time stand-up comedian? Does it violate any of these ethical codes? And can the State Bar Association kick the person out for being a judge? So those are some, I'm not sure there's a correct answer to this. I know everybody gets mad at me because I never have any answers. I'm unfortunately answerless on this one too. But the idea is it's to get you thinking. These are kind of some of the issues that arise from being a judge, that every step you take, all the things that you do are going to be highly scrutinized all the time from members of the public, from the State Bar Association, from the Disciplinary Committee. So you're really under a microscope, and you have to be very cautious and careful about ever creating that appearance of impropriety. Okay. Along with that goes this question: should judges use social media, electronic social media? If judges have Facebook or Instagram or something like that, does it create an appearance of impropriety? Should they be permitted to have it? And then is there a distinction about why they have it? Can they have it and just post like pictures of their family or friends or something like that? What if they post political commentary? Like, how could that get them in trouble? So that's one of the decisions that judges have to make a lot of times. Are they going to use social media, and how are they going to use social media? And is it going to step into that area of appearance of impropriety? So your Chapter 8 discussion or assignment, your Chapter 8 assignment is on judicial conduct. So you can, now that you have all this information, you can jump on My GCC and you can complete your Chapter 8 assignment. Okay, so that is all I have for the first lecture. I will be back with the second one, and we're going to look at all the other people that work in the courtroom and what their duties and responsibilities are. So you can think about the judge is the boss, but there's all these other people that work in the courtroom, and we'll talk about all the things that they do. So I will see you soon.